Welcome to the Founder Podcast, where we explore the journeys of some of the most successful and inspiring entrepreneurs from around the world. I'm your host, Chris Lee, a serial entrepreneur with a passion for building and growing businesses. Throughout my career, I founded multiple nine-figure businesses and learned a thing or two about what it takes to succeed in the world of business. I want to share those lessons with you by searching out the coolest guests on planet Earth and have them share their own incredible stories. But this podcast, it's not just for entrepreneurs. It's for anyone that's looking to be inspired by these stories of people who have overcome incredible odds and create something truly remarkable. So join me on this journey as we explore the fascinating world of entrepreneurship and meet the founders that are shaping it today. Let's dive in. Hey everybody, we want to welcome Mr. Dan Caldwell to the podcast. Super excited to have him on here. Dan is a freaking rock star entrepreneur, was the founder of I don't know if I would call it a childhood brand. It was more of like when I was like early 20s, teenager, which was super rocking. The founder of Tapout. Really excited to get to know Dan a little bit better today, have him share his story. Welcome to the show, Dan.
Hey, thanks a lot, Chris. Thanks for having me on, buddy. I want to hear your story. I hope at some point you're going to interview yourself on your podcast so I can hear the whole story about how you're taking over the world.
Oh, dude, we'll get to that sometime. I guess with this, we just want to keep it a good discussion. It can be about you. We can have, talk about pretty much anything. I like to, talk about founders and what made them tick, what makes them tick, what made them who they are. But, anything that's on your mind, what's driving you today, we're going to jump into all of that. So, dude, Dan, so for those that don't know your story, dude, tell us about Mr. Dan Caldwell.
Yeah, so I mean, I grew up in San Bernardino. I think I always felt like I was an entrepreneur, but eventually I took a class in high school on law enforcement and decided I wanted to become a police officer. And so I kind of veered off. I went from being, thinking I'm going to be an entrepreneur, starting a business. I was skipping high school. I was skipping classes so I could go interview different entrepreneurs. I would drive out to the beach and walk into some guy's store that I'd realized he was the owner, and I'd kind of talk to him about, how'd you start your business? And so I always thought I was going to be an entrepreneur until I heard this law enforcement thing. And I thought, chasing bad guys and car chases and, getting in fights. And I thought this could be the best job in the world. So I thought I would try that out. So I put myself through the academy and became, while I was in the academy, I took on this job as a security officer at a high school. And my partner, who's also a security officer at the high school, we just kept talking and became best friends. And that was my friend Charles, who one day came to me and said, "Hey, there's this show called the Ultimate Fighting Championship where these guys are going to fight to like the death or something, no rules." And we knew as police officers that was important to what we were doing. So we set up some, hey, we got to watch this thing. So we watched it and we were blown away. We could not believe what was going on the show, but it was like police work. Cops is on at the time and I'm watching this stuff and I'm like, this is just like police work. You grab a guy, you take him down to the ground, you try to get him, subdued. And this is exactly what this guy, Hoist Gracie, was doing. So we saw this guy, Hoist Gracie, beat, 3 or 4 guys in the first Ultimate Fighting Championship. And so we decided to look him up and found out that he had this school in Torrance, California. So literally the next week, while we were still in the academy, we drove down to Torrance on a Saturday because we had classes during the week. And we drove down on a Saturday and started taking classes with Hoist Gracie. And then ultimately realized we saw how much money these guys were making selling T-shirts, and we thought, why can't we do something like that? And of course, we had no idea. We don't know anything about making T-shirts. We were not in the T-shirt printing business. We had no idea how that worked, but we knew it was a good idea. So we just started from ground zero. Like we're gonna go to these little tiny jiu-jitsu events and small MMA events that they were starting to have at the time that were still illegal in California. But we'd go to these little events and we would set up a little tiny table. I mean, I have video of us like 4 shirts all folded up in squares and like 2 hats sitting on top of them because there wasn't enough room. And we would try to sell our goods there. And it started out really small.
You got to send me over a couple of those pics. We got to feature that on here, from
yeah.
those. Yeah. What year was this that this was all taking place?
So this is like so I think I got hired in 1993 and we started the company in around 1997 conceptually, getting the drawings together, trying to figure out how we were going to make stuff. We got our first, but what was crazy was right out the gate we got an Ultimate Fighter because we got a UFC guy. So because we knew a lot of the people that were in the space, and we had met this manager who knew this other manager who happened to have a bunch of UFC guys. And we just saw the opportunity there. And it was like we didn't have a lot of money, and we just gave him a call and we said, "Hey, do you think you have some fighters fighting in the UFC?" And he said, "I happen to have a couple great fights coming up. Pat Miletich, who's going to be fighting for the Ultimate Fighting Championship belt, and then also Jeremy Horn, who's fighting a really tough guy from Brazil." And we were big fans of Jeremy Horn because he was a big jiu-jitsu guy, so we've been watching Jeremy a little bit in different fights of his. And so I want to say he charged us about $2,800 or $2,500, and which was like, I know it seems like nothing today, but it felt
Sounds like a lot of money when you don't have any.
Oh yeah, because we're living to our means, we're getting paid nothing as police officers hardly, and yeah, we have to drive a nice car. So he's driving a badass souped up Mustang that a Cobra that he put exhausts on and aluminum heads and all. This thing's all souped up, and I'm driving this badass twin turbo RX-7. Living to the last dollar till you have like no money left, and. But that's you're not getting paid a lot either. Risk our lives, put our lives out there. But I think that we had to figure out how to scrape 2,500, and ultimately we figured out that we were going to just put it on a credit card. We couldn't.
What kind of money were you making as a police officer?
Oh gosh, I want to say I was getting paid around $20 an hour. Right around that neighborhood.
So $20 an hour is 40 grand a year, and 40 grand a year in California, right? Like, doesn't go anywhere, let alone you're paying state income tax, you're paying all these things, and you got to scrape up $2,500 to get this sponsorship with this guy. Yeah, that's crazy. So you said you ended up putting it on a credit card?
Yeah, you could get, how that really high interest rate, you could like pull cash off your card. And but you do what you got to do, and it was something that we just we didn't know we could. I think at that time we just didn't know what we didn't know. We didn't know it shouldn't work, or that we should fail. We didn't even understand the concept of failure. Like, we should fail, we want to fail. Like, it's a smart concept to look back now and go, failure is what made us. But I didn't want to fail because in our line of business, if you fail, you're dead. So failure is not an option. So we always thought of failure as like, that's not an option, but doing is an option. And we have to do. We understood doing because, you don't have a choice. In law enforcement, you got an alarm going off in a building, a broken window, you're going in. There's 2 of you guys and you're going in. Gun out, and there's nobody else. There's nobody coming to save you. You have to go in there and do that. That's our line of business. So we understood the concept of we have to go make it happen, but didn't understand the concept of failure really. Like, it's a good thing. We understood failure like there's no way we can fail. We can't fail. We got to make this work, especially as we start to spend a lot of money and we're trying to figure out how we don't want to lose the money. We have all this money invested now of our own money. Credit cards are racked up. $20,000. That's back when they give you, you know, you couldn't afford it, and they shouldn't be giving you 20 or $30,000 credit cards, but of course they do. And we're maxing them all out, trying to keep, the business afloat.
Yeah, that's always a scary time in business. In fact, my first business that you talk about failing, my first business that did fail, things that you're sharing right now are like eerily like reminding me of like times that we had to max out credit cards to make payroll. Fortunately, I didn't go and get a cash advance on my credit card, but I found a buddy that would actually run my credit card through his business and cash me out whatever the difference was in like the 3% fee, and yeah, use that to cover payroll. Man, those those early times of being an entrepreneur when you're just scraping by and it's interesting because I think a lot of times entrepreneurs, the reason why we're successful is because we're a little bit stupider than other people. You know, like just stupid enough to do things like maxing out your credit card and taking risks that don't make any sense at all, and it doesn't add up. At least that's what I've found is like I'm just dumb enough to take a risk.
Yeah, I mean, we're totally stupid. That's exactly why we didn't know what we didn't know. We didn't know this shouldn't work. None of this should work. Whatever we're doing should not work. You have no money, you're starting a business, you're building this company. I mean, honestly, at the beginning, we didn't really see the biggest vision. We knew the UFC was going to be big, and we knew the sport because everybody we told it to, every time we would show it to them. Like if I'd come over to your house and I go like, "Hey, there's this thing on tonight. We should get it." And we would go watch it. And I actually did this with like law enforcement buddies of mine. And we watched the very first, I can remember I was at a friend of mine's house, Jason, and we went to his house to watch the first UFC that we actually had our clothes in there. And I wasn't even with my partner because he was someplace else. And I was working. I was just getting off work, so I had to go straight from the office to this guy's house. And we were watching the first UFC, and he watched that thing, and he could not believe what was going on in the ring. Anybody who watched it couldn't believe it. And they all recognized it too as being, for law enforcement, we recognized it. You have early adopters like John McCarthy, who was a ref in the early UFCs. He was, worked for LAPD. So we knew as law enforcement, this was something. There's something to do with this with law enforcement. This is going to be big in law enforcement. Like all police officers at some point are going to have to learn this.
So what would you say like initially drove you? Was it like the passion for the sport? Was it the idea that you could make money as an entrepreneur? Was it doing something else besides being a police officer? Like what drove you in those early days to take all those stupid risks?
I think it was honestly, I mean, I just have to say it was probably almost all the above. Like we need, you're not making a lot of money, so we're trying to figure out what is every cop out there has. Ask any law enforcement buddy of yours. They all have a side hustle, every single one of them. Some of them are making them. I know one guy who's making those little beanbag tossers, that you try to get in the hole. And, somebody else is making tables. Another guy, he's doing a Turo business. Every law enforcement officer I know.
Another guy's in with the local drug dealer getting paid on the back
Yeah,
end.
hopefully they're not doing that. They're that's the one. But it's honestly what causes guys to do that. It's like I mean, of course, we didn't. I mean, I wouldn't. That's the worst crime in the world is an officer who
Dirty cop.
betrays his dirty cop who betrays his people. But at the end of the day, that's why they're dragged into that because it's like teachers. They teachers and law enforcement officers. Those two people should be paid more, and there's not a lot we can do about that. But if I can ever vote for a bill where that we can allocate some money away from the politicians and towards the teachers and law enforcement, that's exactly what I would do.
I
But
agree with you. I was actually a victim of childhood labor because my dad was a school teacher, and so we had the rule growing up in our household by the age of 12 you had to take care of all your stuff besides underwear and food on the table. Like you wanted clothes, shoes, go out, gas in the car, a car, whatever, right? Like we had to go and we had to make it happen. And so I got my first job when I was 9 years old because old Chuck Lee, my dad, he Yeah, he wasn't getting paid enough as a school teacher, and my mom was a stay-at-home mom, so we we had to learn the art of the side hustle very early on.
That's a great idea. I somewhat did that with my own kids too. It's the same exact thing, but start a business and have them work in it. You got to work in the business if you're gonna pay your way here in the family.
Love it. Love it. So, yeah, so you were just driven on a bunch of different things. Like, what was it? What was the turning point for your business? And I've heard this story before, and it's actually like one of my favorite things about you is just like the hustle that ultimately led to like the tipping point. In fact, like what what was the timeline of like when you started until like the tipping point finally hit?
Well, I think you're talking about the story with the Ultimate Fighter. But that's ultimately what changed our business because it changed the UFC too. The UFC was if they were putting a lot of money into well when the Zuffa purchased the UFC, which was Lorenzo Fertitta, Frank Fertitta, and Dana White, when they purchased the UFC in 2001, we were already sponsoring fighters and somewhat in the UFC. They were giving us a little bit of love. We were in their video game, so it was kind of exciting to us because we were having these small wins along the way. We're getting these little wins along the way, and it's pushing us because Tapout's all of a sudden in this video game, the Dreamcast video game. Tapout's on this new fighter that just came out, and he knocked some guy out. Tapout. We're getting a lot of interest, but we were so much the mouse in front of the flashlight. The money. We weren't making a ton of money,
Yeah.
and in some ways, I mean, we got to in the early 2000s, we were making over $1 million, several $1 million, but every penny, we're a self-capitalized business, so every penny was going into capitalizing the business. And if you've never done that, I'm sure you understand this, but we had inventory. So as you have to build this company and you have to put more money into inventory, all the money that you're making, you're having to put back into inventory. So you're not really making money, or at least you're making money, but it's not in your pocket. It's sitting on the shelves out in the warehouse. So we had this little tiny warehouse, and in 2005, they decided that we heard that they were going to do this television show, which was kind of big for us. We knew this was going to be somewhat like we knew something was going to change because of this. We're going to be on TV now instead of just pay-per-view. Everybody's going to be able to see this.
Right.
So that was great for us because we could tell people tune in and watch this. You'll see what this UFC stuff's all about. So I was driving. I was living in a small condo. I was driving down to San Diego, and I get this call from my partner who says, Chuck Liddell just called. He said they're starting to film The Ultimate Fighter right now. He just got his place in Vegas, and we need to leave for Vegas right now, today. And I said, I'm on my way to San Diego. I'm going down there with the family to SeaWorld right now. Like
What year was
I'm not
this?
sure.
What year
This
was
is
this?
2005.
Okay,
2005.
so we're talking, you started this thing in 1997, 2005. You guys are starting to make some money. You got some revenue coming in, but it's all going back to recapitalize the business, continue to grow. At what point did you drop out of the police force?
I want to say 2003. I left for good in
Okay, so
2003.
so 6 years of just straight side hustle, weekends, nights, mornings, like lunch breaks, whatever it was to making this thing happen. A lot of people don't realize like this is the underlying of what happens, right? Most people look at guys like yourself, myself, or other people that have had 9-figure, 10-figure, 11-figure exits, right? The Elon Musk of the world or whatever, and they think like it just everything lined up for them. They put in a little bit of effort. They got some financiers. They got some seed funding, Series A, Series B, whatever. Went public. Got all these. Got paid out big time. They never see the actual like and understand the real details of 6 years of side hustle, and then another 2 years of doing it full time and really just operating at a break even, maybe having a good job, but not really a great business. And so I don't know. I just want to people to focus on like that, right? Like how much deep roots you were sending down for before anybody saw what was happening with the tree or with the bamboo shoots, right? Like, I mean, it was just roots, 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 roots for a long time. So I think that's so cool. So you get this call, Chuck Liddell, from your partner. Chuck Liddell's up in Vegas. They're going to be filming this show. You're down. You have every excuse in the world not to go up there, right? You're with your family. Hey, we'll do it later, whatever, right? Like there's always going to be another opportunity. Okay, so take us there.
Yeah, I mean, I think you were so on point. I think what, just in the bigger picture, if I step back, that's the difference of what separates people, successful entrepreneurs. Most of the time, it's just the fact that you're willing to keep going. That you're 6 years in, 7 years in, 8 years in, seeing progress, but not the type of progress that you had dreamed about, and you keep going. And at this moment, I'm thinking, okay, I could go to SeaWorld with my family. Our bags are packed. That was our day. Or I'm actually going to have to tell my little daughter that we have to turn around halfway down there and go back. And I'm probably daddy's going to be gone now for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks.
Right.
And that's what I had to do. And I turned back around and got home. I had to go straight to we had a small warehouse at like 1,900 square feet or maybe 2,200 square feet. And I had to go grab all the clothes, get them all ready. My partner met me there. We jump in the car and we start driving to Vegas. It's a 4 or 5 hour drive. And we get to Vegas and we ended up sleeping on, Chuck Liddell had this apartment and we just, we didn't have the money really. I mean, we were making so little money, so much money was on the shelves that we were just paying ourselves enough to pay our rent. We were like, write a check for the rent, write a check for some groceries, and that's it. Everything else we had to figure it out. His girlfriend's working, my girlfriend's girlfriend's working, and we're just being able to try to get by. And so we're sleeping on Chuck Liddell's couch. We're watching. He's one of the coaches for the Ultimate Fighter. So he's going in there every day. So we want to make sure he's got Tapout shirts ready. And we would go in the middle of the night. We found out where they were doing the show. We kind of tricked Chuck into telling us where. He wanted to tell us, but we can't let him know. We can't let the UFC know that he just gave it up. So he told us where the gym was going to be. And so we decided to start going to the gym every night at like 1 p.m. or 1 a.m. And those little like slots where you put your mail in on the side of the door there? Yep. We would shove like 10 shirts in there and a couple hats and a couple pairs of shorts every night. And just praying that one day this is going to get to a fighter somehow. We didn't know how, we didn't know if, we didn't know what. We just hoped that, it would pay off down the road. And we would go home and we part of us staying there, we wanted to wash. So when Chuck was out filming, we would wash all of his clothes for him. And he I don't know if he knows yet, but because we never told him, but we would only pretty much wash his tap out stuff. So he'd be left with like Pitt, which was his gym, with his partner Hackelman, and then we would wash his tap out stuff. So that's all he would have to wear when he went into the show. And so when you ask the producers today, they'll still tell you there was no tap out in the first Ultimate Fighter, but if you watch it, you'll see there was, because that's what we were doing, And then a few months later, what happened is, so they did these fights in the Ultimate Fighter where they keep fighting to try to get to the end. And then at the end of the show, the two coaches are going to fight, and and then they have all the guys who were in the Ultimate Fighter are going to fight. And so these two, so one day for the show, the coaches didn't fight on the same day, but they had the show at the Las Vegas University out there, and the University of Las Vegas, and that's where they held the event. And we didn't really know exactly what the event was going to be like, but we knew it was going to be televised. and we wanted to sponsor the event, but we didn't have enough money to sponsor it. So they let us give them clothes to sell at the event, the UFC did, just so that we could pay for the sponsorship. And
So
we,
before you go into this, let's recap.
yeah,
So you're in Vegas, and you're just hustling, right? You're shoving t-shirts and shorts through a freaking mail slot at night. You're sleeping on the ground, sleeping in your car. You're going you're going into Chuck Liddell's laundry, doing his laundry for him, which, by the way, is just a principle of like how to network and how to add value, right? Like if you want something from somebody, like go and add as much value as you possibly can. Like the fact that this guy didn't want to be doing his own laundry, right? And like he's got these guys that are that he likes Dan and his partner, and they're willing to do his laundry for him. He's like, sure, why not, right? But then the ingenuity of like, dude, let's only make sure that he has clean tap out clothes. And I think, dude, that right there, I've remembered that part of the story. And Dan told me the story a few years back when we first met, and I was just like, dude, that's freaking phenomenal. That is the epitome of entrepreneurial ingenuity hustle, right? Like it's like grit with some smarts and just willing to get it done. And all these little things, all these little wins that you're doing along the line is ultimately what leads to this moment that you're about to share, which I'm super stoked about. So we're, they're about to air this big fight, right? You can't afford to pay for the sponsorship, but they allow you to sell some t-shirts. So you're going to get your name out there a little bit. What happens next?
I mean, we had a lot riding on this because we put a lot of time and effort into this, trying to make sure that this was, making sure we always made sure though that we were, is in every place that we could be, and that we knew this big event was going to go on. So we just knew something special was going on when we got there because there were so many people in the crowd wearing our stuff, and this guy Diego Sanchez, who was going to be fighting, they made him wear Ultimate Fighter stuff. But we had our two logos on the mat, and we had logos on the sides, and we had their parents wearing the stuff, and we could see them on the big broadcast video screen. They kept showing their parents, of the fighters, because that was kind of these guys were about to fight, and so as they came in, they wanted to see the reactions from their parents, and especially even as they were fighting, and they had our tap out stuff on, and we're like, we're all over this thing, and we're sitting next to Chuck Liddell, and when the Stephan Bonner fight happened with Forrest Griffin and Stephan Bonner, which is still considered one of the best fights in UFC history, at one point these guys are like, they're throwing leather and they're putting everything on the line, and at one point Dana White walks back and he tells Chuck Liddell, there's 10 million people watching this event right now. Well, the UFC
10 million.
10 million. And in pay-per-view, they were only getting, maybe a few 100,000 views on their pay-per-view shows at that time.
Wow.
But to have on television, the mainstream audience who really may not be totally into the UFC, but they were liking what they were seeing, because that's why 10 million people are watching right now. And so not just that, but what we didn't know was at home, my parents are texting me and they're putting your logo on the television. Well, I didn't understand what that meant until later I watched the broadcast, and when they do that, hey, this show's been brought to you by Budweiser, the King of Beers. Well, that's what they were doing for us. We're like on there, and they're saying this show's been brought to you by Tapout at inyourface.com. Go check them out for the best fight gear on.
Say the URL once again. I love this. What was your URL? Your original URL?
So it's inyourface.com. That was
like
tapout.com at the time. Somebody else out.
Was it spelled YA or in your?
Yeah. It was so stupid because, if you're trying to help people find your website, this is probably the worst name on the planet, but it was inyaface.com. That was our site. But
oh, I love that.
So about right towards the end of the fight, my web guy calls me and he goes, "What the heck is going on, man?" And I could barely hear him because the fight's going on. I'm going, "What do you mean? What are you talking about?" And he's going, "Your site is shutting down. Like there's so many orders coming in right now. There's 3,000 orders a minute coming in right now."
A minute.
Or I'm sorry, an hour.
Oh,
3,000 orders an hour coming in right now. And it's happening so fast. Back then, you're talking 2005, they didn't have gateways that could support that. At least we didn't have the gateway that could support that. So he said, "I've literally had to stop the processing, and all we can do is capture the credit card numbers."
Oh.
So I said, "Do whatever you got to do." And I'm telling Charles what's going on, and the electricity in that room, and then Stephen Bonner and Forrest Griffin fight that became.
Hold on, time out. For listeners that don't understand what Dan just shared, he said, so the credit cards actually weren't processing. Okay, which means when something processes, it automatically happens by the computer. It checks if they have the balance. It hits, so on and so forth. All they were able to do at this point, because basically the website had been shut down, was capture the credit card information. So there was nothing being processed. There was nothing, and so essentially what had to happen at that point was like you had to go back and manually process every one of these, right?
Yeah, we one at a time, just manually on those, those credit card machines, the little square boxes that just has the
punch it in
like phone number pad. That's how we had to process every single credit card after that,
goodness.
Which were thousands and thousands and thousands of orders.
So how many orders came in that first night? Just when
I honestly, I wish I could tell you, but I don't even know. I just know it was thousands. And when we got back over the next weeks, we had so many orders that we had to shut off the we didn't have an inventory program. So you figure most people now today, everybody's got an inventory program. Well, at that time, shopping carts were like built. You had to build these things.
Yeah. And
we didn't really have an inventory program. So unfortunately, all the stuff that people were ordering, we didn't have in stock. So none of it was in our warehouse, or most of it was.
You mean your 2,200 square foot warehouse didn't have thousands and thousands of orders?
No. And so we ended up. I called. I mean, we're trying to do plug all the holes on the way home. I remember driving home, talking to my. I'm on multiple phones. I'm talking to my web guy. I'm talking to the landlord. I'm trying to take the space next door because it happened to be empty. And so that was another 2,200 square feet. So I tried to take that space and the next space, but the other space wasn't ready yet. So as soon as we got home, we cut a hole in the wall and we took that space next door. And we had thousands of orders just leaned up against the wall waiting to be fulfilled because we couldn't fulfill them all.
That is wild. So you go, and if I remember the story right, like you guys just continued to, like, any piece of space that was adjacent to your building, you guys continue to rack up over the next, foreseeable future, right?
Oh yeah, we were in like an industrial park, so it was kind of like a built-in C, and it's I can't remember exactly how much square footage we had then, somewhere close to 100,000, but we took all the big spaces all the way around the whole center until we had the whole place,
and
ultimately in the Tapout Center.
So this is just like, I've talked to a lot of entrepreneurs, and I swear I have never talked to somebody that just had such a pinnacle event, right? Like that was just so changing. But like, once again, as we talked about it, it was 7 years or 8 years of work, all 6 years employed, 2 years fully engaged in this business, right? You're just doing the work, paying the bills. That's it. And then just smack, man. You got lucky, right? Like basically all this ingenuity, all this hard work translates into this massive amounts of luck. Where the UFC, if I remember right, you shared that they essentially aired your ad because they weren't able to sell ad space to anybody else, and they didn't want to seem like just a small little organization. Is that right?
Well, I think that early on, that was kind of early on. So early on, they needed to put some sponsor there, and they really liked our logo, and we were already kind of in the UFC, so I think they felt sorry for us when they first bought the UFC, and they felt like we were kind of the grassroots marketing of the whole space, and they honestly came to us in 2001 when they had their first show, and they called us into the arena. Lorenzo and Dana did, and we walk into the arena. We had never seen this, and we'd never had this before, because we'd just been on fighters up to that point. But when we walked into the arena, we had two huge Tapout logos on the mat, and we were blown away. We could not believe that these guys had did this for us. And so, I always have to give credit to Dana and Lorenzo for helping us, build. I think when you're relentless and you're always out there pushing and pushing and pushing, and people see this in you, they want your dream to come true too. I know a lot of people preach that everybody wants to stomp on your dream. They don't want you to, be successful. But I think when people see your, the energy that you put into and how much you believe in yourself or believe in a dream, people want to get behind those type of people. They want to get behind the dreamers. They want to be a part of that dream. And I think that's a lot why Dana and Lorenzo kind of took us under their wing and started us off with that sponsorship. And at that time we were paying them like $3,000 to be on that mat for every UFC, and we would pay it in clothing. We would literally give them $3,000 worth of clothing to sell, and that's what we had to go back to, because we would kind of go back and forth between giving them cash and giving them clothes when we couldn't afford, because we didn't have the cash in the bank to write that check. So we would go back to, so for this Ultimate Fighter, we had to go back to that because it was a little bit more at the time, but we had to give them clothes for that because we didn't have the money.
Right. Yeah, no, I love that. Yeah, definitely other people are, other entrepreneurs, they want to see people that are doing exactly what they did once upon a time, right? The grind, and so the fact that Dana and those guys recognize that's really so cool. And it wasn't just because you showed up one day or 2 days. It was like you were there year in, year out, grinding, just doing the thing. And like, man,
And I
so
think even as beginning entrepreneurs, because in beginning entrepreneurs, when I'm excited for you, Chris, when I see your business growing, like that excites me. I think even as a non-entrepreneur, like people that are building a, coaching business or a podcast or whatever that might be, even if it's your first business, when people see you're passionate about something, that passion is infectious. Like people want to be around people that are passionate and relentless and have a dream. They want to be around that because sometimes it helps them find their own dream. And even if they never, if they're not entrepreneurs, they just see people who have a dream like that and they wish that they have a little bit of that in them. And so they're willing to follow them. They're willing to help. That's why you see guys like, like Gary Vee has a story about where his cameraman, gave up his time to come film him for like free for like months on end until Gary decided to hire him one day, but he was just giving up his time. And I think people do that because they see this dream that this person has and they just want to follow him. They want to be a part of that dream. And they're willing to do that, do whatever it takes to follow this person. And I think every entrepreneur has to know that if they live that every single day, if you're relentless and you're talking about your dream all the time and you're putting it out to the world, that you'll get people that file in behind you and want to be a part of that with you.
Absolutely. I love that. Love that. Dude, so from then on, if I remember the story correctly, I mean, that was really the catalyst. And then things never slowed down from there. You guys continued to just exponentially grow from 2005 until ultimately you ended up exiting from the business. Was it 2008, 2009? When was it that you?
2010, yeah. I mean, it was always something. You always are looking for the next big thing. I mean, we had our TV show. We had our own show that we had signed for 3 seasons, but we only ended up doing 2 because unfortunately my partner got killed before we started our 3rd season. We had the opportunity to be in a movie like Warrior, We had we've had a NASCAR, we've had, we've just done, the things the opportunities that having a dream has given me and my partners, is like unbelievable. Like I can't even put into words because it just it's something that I never would have thought would have ever happened to a person like me coming from San Bernardino, in the place that I grew up in. I had great parents, but we didn't have a lot of money. And for us to be able to kind of have something like this for people, and I know it happens to a lot of people. I mean, I'm sure that there's so many stories. That's why podcasts like this are so great, because there's so many. Every entrepreneur has a story. Like I say, every police officer has a story, because every police officer could write a book from all the things that they go through. Every entrepreneur has a story, has a movie in them, has a podcast in them, has a book in them. Just because we all go through so much when we're trying to build our companies. There's so much on the line. Everything is on the line. Everything is being sacrificed sometimes. Or every penny that we have, all of our time, all of our dreams and hopes, and family members sometimes, friends that walk away. I can't tell you how many friends, when we started Tapout, we had other guys that were with us, and they literally walked away from us. I was telling them, dude, this is about to blow up. This is coming right now. It's going to blow up. Please just give us a little more time. I can remember being on the phone with the guy, talking those words to him. And he's, I can't do it no more, man. It's just taking up my time, and I just don't see it. You keep saying that. Yeah, I remember him saying, you keep saying that, but nothing's happening. And
gold.
And then within a year, 3 feet from gold, exactly. There's a great little story about Howard Carter. I don't know if you know who Howard Carter is, but I was just watching a documentary about this guy Howard Carter, that in the late 1800s he went to Egypt to find the riches. Everybody was kind of excavating Egypt at the time, and he went to Egypt at 17 years old with just this dream to find something. And over the next 30 years, he just every day trying to find what could be the next thing. And around 2007, he had got word. 2007, 1907, he got word that there might be another king in the Valley of the Kings that they haven't found yet, and another tomb. And that became his dream, and everything that he did from that point on just became about, how can I find this other tomb? Now, nobody believed in this guy. Nobody. Like, everybody's saying, no, all the kings in the Valley of the Kings have been found. All the tombs in the Valley of Kings have been found. There's not another tomb out there. Where are you finding, anything that says that there's more tombs out there? But he had found little things and little clues and little things that said that there was a little trinket that somebody found in a dig that said that there was a King Tut out there still. And in like 30 years later, or 20 years later from that point, they find on one of his digs that are being financed with the last dollars that they have. Literally, this guy had told him, Lord Carnarvon, who was financing, said, this is the last year that you're going to be able to dig. And on that last year of their dig, imagine they've been digging for years. He still believed in this. He kept pushing forward, and they find the steps to this tomb. And they dig it out over the next couple months. And when he gets in there, they open up a small hole in there, and they tell this beautiful thing that I just love what they said. So much so that I just remembered it. Ooh, it gets me a little emotional when I even think about it. But he goes, Lord Carnarvon was there with him, and they punch a little hole inside, and Howard Carter looks through the hole, and Lord Carnarvon, what do you see? What do you see? They're both invested in this, time and money, millions and millions of dollars. And he says, beautiful things, beautiful things. And I could just imagine that moment, because every entrepreneur has that moment in their life. Like for me, that was 2005, 6, when the Ultimate Fighter was happening. And we're there watching this fight, going, something special is going on here right now. This is something special. Like, this is going to change our lives. We didn't know how. We didn't know it was going to be that much. but we knew something special was happening. And I think I'm sure, I know you have moments in your life where those things have happened for you. And it's just unbelievable to kind of go through a life-changing moment like that. But it's because you keep going. You won't have them as an entrepreneur. You won't have them if you don't keep going.
Yeah, my buddy Alex Hormozy, he loves talking about that. Like the only way that you actually fail is when you take yourself out of the game, is what he says. Is like when you quit, when you give up. It's as you continue to go, you keep pushing forward. It's the compound effect, really. And in my own career, the compound effect has been like absolutely insane because when you're doubling a penny, those first 5 or 6 years of doubling a penny is hardly anything, right? But when you
Yeah.
continue to double it, right? It's the old Chinese parable of double a grain of rice in 31 days, and you have enough rice to fill the world. And and really, like those moments, right, of seeing beautiful things of the 2005s and 2006s for tap out. My company, Soul Gen Power, just kind of the pinnacle of things, of like all the work, all the sacrifice. For me, like it was the doors knocked and the failures and the opportunities slammed in my face that didn't work out, and just like constantly on the grind looking for it until finally, right, like the stuff really compounds and then it manifests and people begin to see all the grassroots that you've been laying for so many years, right? Like there was no respect for you, there was no anything else. You got business partners like you're talking about that are bailing out, that they just can't catch the vision. They don't believe in it. One of my favorite things is, like, for me as an entrepreneur, is being the evangelist and being the one that believes. And I don't need. I love the definition of evangelist as to be a true evangelist. You don't need others to believe what you believe. They just need to believe that you believe, right?
Yeah.
And so, that's always been my calling in business, is like being the believer and getting other people to believe so much that I believe, and getting behind the vision and the direction and everything. And so, man, it's so cool to hear that part of your story. Now, obviously, we're talking about all the glamour. Like, what is a point in your career? So you've had many years since 2005 and six. What's a point in your career that was like depressing, that was really hard to get through, and like how did you learn from it, draw on it? Can you share something like that?
I, all the, we had so many, it was so many times, Bill, I mean, of course, when my partner was killed was unbelievably hard. It's honestly why I decided to sell the company, because I just didn't want to do it anymore. It was like it was a dream of ours together, and without him there, it just didn't feel the same. It didn't taste the same. But during that time in 2005, when we were after the Ultimate Fighter and all those orders were coming through, we were only qualified for like $50,000 in credit card sales. And because we had all of a sudden started doing, almost $1 million a month, they canceled all the money coming through. And we needed that money because we didn't have any of that product produced. We needed that money to
Right.
produce the goods. And so I remember being on the phone with those guys trying to figure out every way possible to get them to release some of the money, just some of it, so we could start putting orders together. I was like, release half of it, because if I get half of it, I can put the money, I can use that money to go make the goods. But they didn't want to release none of it. And they wanted to actually hold it for like 6 months until they could make sure there were no chargebacks. And it was such an explosion. They hadn't seen that before. So they just wanted to hold on to the money until they made sure it was safe. And I just remember being so, like, I could not sleep. I was getting 1 hour of sleep a night. I was trying to deal with them every day. I was trying to find other credit card companies that could take us on. Nobody would. We didn't have great credit. And I remember at one point I'd thrown all the chairs in the office out in the parking lot, and I was just I was emotional. I was sitting on a curb and I was pretty emotional. And I called my partner. I said, "I don't know, buddy. I don't know how we're gonna get out of this. Like it's done. Like we need to make goods, and all these people are gonna start. You know, it's crazy how you're in the best place in your life and you're contemplating quitting. That's what comes over you. You know, during the best time of your life, the best things are happening to you in your life, and you're contemplating quitting. You're like, oh, I don't know what to. And that's why it's so great, I think, to have a partner, because when you're down, hopefully they're up, and when they're down, hopefully you're up. And he gave me some great advice. He goes, remember that guy we were talking to last week? He was a great business guy that made a bunch of money in different businesses, and we had met him last week. He goes, he gave you his number, right? And I said, yeah. He goes, why don't you give him a call? And I give him a call. Within like a few hours, I had the whole thing solved. He was willing to sign for credit for us with the credit card company, and they released all the funds immediately. The next day, all of our money started releasing, and it fixed the whole problem. So it's just great, I think, always having a partner where you can look at, they can see things that you're not seeing, especially when you're in those down and outs moments. And, we always had moments like that. There were always never enough money. There was always, and it doesn't matter how big you get, it's just going to be bigger numbers. It's like you don't have $20,000. Well, down the road, you're not going to have the $1 million to make the payment. And down the road, you're not going to have the $20 million to make the payment. So I can remember I can remember $20 million coming in. I can remember $10 million going out. That's those, I wouldn't even have ever thought we could do be writing a check for 10 million bucks. Just unfathomable at certain times of your business life. But you just got to keep your eye on the bigger picture and stay relentless and keep pushing forward. And if you don't quit, like Alex Ramosi said, if you don't quit, eventually you'll be successful. Eventually you'll make it.
Yeah, man, I love that. Couple things that you shared, having a quality partner is so very imperative. Like me, I'm a partnership guy, right? Like I hate doing things
Yeah.
alone. Sounds like you're very similar based on your experience of what you've done and what you're doing right now. And for me, that business partner has been Daryl Kelly, and then in life, my wife, Andrea, and both have helped me really keep that good, solid perspective. And it's so funny, like these demons that we create, and these big, like, we think that things are unsolvable, as you were talking about with like this credit card thing. And when in reality, there's a solution out there. We just haven't thought of it yet. And it's so very important as entrepreneurs, as just, I mean, livers of life, right? Like that we remove ourselves from the situation, remind ourselves like how good we have it, like what's going good. I have a good physical body. God is still good. My family's good. We have all these sales coming in for these T-shirts. We just have no idea how to process them, right? Like all these positive things. Like, because when you get out of there, at least for me, and I remove myself from the negative situation, it helps me solve that at a way higher rate, and especially look for
Yeah.
solutions outside of what I'm currently thinking. Just having a different perspective, which I loved, is what you shared. Um, but yeah, man, that is so 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 important, because I mean, just like you, there's so many times in my career that I just thought the world was crumbling, right? Like, oh,
Yeah.
like I have no solution for this. I've never been through this. Um, we're done. It's over. I should quit. Early in launching our business. So we launched in October of 2017. January 2018, we get hit with $1 million fine from the state. And
Oh,
I think at that point we had like $5,000 in our bank account. Um, you
oh my
know,
God.
and we had all these sales and stuff that we were trying to get processed, very similar to you guys, inventory problems, all the stuff. and we get hit with this fine because of an electrical infraction. Not only were they hitting us for actual infractions, but they tried to hit us with a fine for every single proposal that we had given to potential customers. And,
Oh my,
you know, I thought life was
I'd
over.
have quit. I'd tell y'all right now, you'd have been that early in the business, I'd have quit for sure. I mean, it takes a lot to get through that. You know, you can't
Yeah.
even fathom $1 million at that time.
I mean, dude, I thought we were done. I was just like, you know, all this anxiety, all this stress, all of my shoulders, like there was nothing I could do in the short term that I felt like I could do to get out of it. My business partner, he was stressing, Daryl, but then like, he came to me like the next day. He's like, dude, I just feel like everything's gonna be fine. We'll work through this. Let's get through this. And eventually, we ended up fighting the state, and we eventually put it off, and we ended up settling like 10 months later for like an $18,000 fine, and it was like paid out $1,000 a month for the next 18 months. And it was like one of the best case scenarios of like what I initially thought it was going to be, putting us out of
Yeah.
business. And so, man, it's amazing. And you had this experience, and we've had so many experiences like this, where it's just important for anybody that's listening to this that they understand, like, just keep going, right? Like, there will always
Yep.
be a solution. Life is too good to give up, right? Like, don't give up on your job, don't give up on your marriage, don't give up on your life, don't give up on like there's so many good things that if you just have your head
Yep.
down, you'll figure out a solution. There's somebody out there that's going to be able to help get you through it. So, appreciate you
Yeah.
sharing that.
Yeah,
It's,
I think when you talk about having a partner, I mean, him just telling you that probably changed your perspective a little bit. I mean, and you talking about your wife, like right now, we just started up our podcast again too. And, I was going to do a podcast by myself, and I'm reaching for a partner, like, I'm going to have a partner. I want to have, I love being able to bounce things off of people. And
oh,
so, when we decided to start our podcast, we were like, we have to do this. I wanted to do it together because I felt like that was just my MO. And anybody who has partners in their businesses, there's some people who say, I don't want partners in my business. That's okay. That's them. But for me, I'm a partner type guy.
it's interesting. I actually had my very first business. I had a terrible experience with partnership. Um, you know, both my partners ended up being just not people I could trust.
Mm.
One, after our business failed, went on to running a Ponzi scheme and ends up serving prison time. Um,
Oh, geez.
just some crazy, crazy partnerships. But luckily, that didn't deter me from partnerships because Daryl has
Mhm.
been an incredible business partner. We've done several different ventures together. Like I'm a big believer. Um, so obviously a very tragic thing with your business partner dying. Sorry, when you first told me that story, that was heartbreaking. So you end up selling your business. It was a 9-figure exit, if I remember right.
Yeah, we're on NDAs, but it was a good exit.
It
Yeah.
was a good one.
I mean,
So
it was nowhere near where we wanted to be. I think we had, I was kind of disappointed. And, sometimes you always, as you start to get going, you sometimes start to believe, your own hype. And I think that we wanted to build the next Nike.
yeah,
And I'm sure I made some mistakes along the way. There were things that I wanted to do different. There are things that I probably should have done different. Um, we it was just so much, going on. We had never built a clothing company before. There was no blueprint for this, and I just didn't know what I didn't know. And as we started to grow in clothing, the difference between it's a really, really hard business because people will wake up one day and just decide, oh, that's not the clothing they want anymore. They want the next thing. And I think we dealt with that a little bit as it started to grow after the crash of 2008. People started to get away from. We were kind of known for our big prints. We had big tap out logos, and um, it was a hard experience all of a sudden having a lot of pushback in the design area where people were, pushing back because they didn't want to wear that type of stuff anymore. But yet the stores still wanted it because they felt like that it was what was selling. But we're like, this is changing. We could feel it on our side that this is changing right now. And they didn't want to be a part of fixing it, didn't want to be a part of the solution. They just wanted to keep buying what was already out there. And then when it ended one day, they just kind of wanted to not do it anymore. So there were some things that happened out there in the retail space that became hard. We're still great business. I mean, our drink business is still out there doing, you know, uh, you know, 9-figure sales every year, just in the drink business, just drinks, So we
Crazy.
built an amazing business that I think I'm very proud of. I know my partner's smiling down still, I think that we will always be remembered because we were there at the beginning of the UFC, nearly the beginning of the UFC during the explosion of the UFC. If you ever look back and tell the story, you have to tell the story of Tapout too. Tapout was there. Tapout was a part of that growth in the early years. And, we're proud of that. We're proud that we did our TV show. Like I said, amazing experiences of, having dinner with Jay-Z, having, sitting down with people that, Mark Wahlberg or, all these different people that we met through over the building our businesses, these amazing businessmen, being signed to CAA, all these experiences were just life changing. And I wouldn't be here talking to you right now if, it all wouldn't have played out the way it did.
Yeah, dude, that's it's such an amazing story, such an amazing experience. So, question for you: any regrets in selling the business? Would you do it again? Would you do it in the same timeline? What would you do differently?
I wish, unfortunately, I think at that time I needed to sell the business between wanting to, it was just, I didn't want to get up every day and deal with it, be the guy that everybody was looking at. Um, and I'd been going through that for a while, after my partner passed away. And I initially got excited at first about, well, not excited because I was still dealing with that my partner passing, but I was like thinking that, I want to keep this alive for him. I want him to, I want to keep his name around. We talked to the Fertitas about, and Dana about getting his name in the ring, and they decided they said, as long as we own the company, as long as we still own this brand, Charles's name will be in this ring, and they inducted him into the Hall of Fame. All that stuff was amazing and great,
That's awesome.
and it felt satisfying. But at the end of the day, I just didn't feel like getting up and doing it anymore. And so taking kind of a back seat, because I stayed on as president for the next 5 years, taking a back seat felt like the right thing to do, even though I felt like, so many things could have been done different during that time. And ultimately, we didn't get the position for the UFC, as the main sponsor anymore. And we were changing stores, and a lot of stores didn't work out, so we were in different stores, and it was just a lot of things that didn't happen the way I wanted them to go down, and it became difficult. So I left in 2015, and I felt so good about the experience. I mean, of course, I wish it would have kept going in a positive way. But I felt like we built something pretty amazing, and I'm glad to move on and keep. I want to build the next amazing thing. That's what I'm looking to do now. I
Yeah.
love being with my family. I love we're just I just it's just a different part of my life, and I love how life takes you into these different transitions and you go through these different moments at the right time in life. I think that's God proposed. I think God takes you through different parts of your life and puts you in those places at the right time of your life, and in challenges that you can overcome, and experiences that you can either, let go by the wayside, or you can live up to that and build something great.
Man, I think it's so awesome what you were able to experience. I mean, exiting a nine-figure business, like that's what so many entrepreneurs dream of. And I mean, most, at least myself, I don't ever view myself as like being a part of a company until the day I die, right? I'm looking at building value, being able to extract some value by selling off the business or whatever it may be. And so like the fact that you were able to experience that, that's something that very, very, very few people will ever be able to accomplish in their lifetime. And you know, obviously, you've been able to build upon that. You got some really cool things going on. Dude, share with us like what do you got going on right now? So I know that you're involved in another clothing brand. Is that right?
No, not
Another
right now.
clothing brand. Oh man,
Yeah,
probably called it
so
wrong.
I'm actually I can't talk about my other I'm consulting for a big company right now that I'm really excited about, but I can't talk about it right now. Just because of some of the things that are going on. But it's we're about to make some big announcements and it's gonna be pretty exciting. So I can't wait for that to happen.
Yeah,
I wish I could talk to you about it right now, but I can't.
dude.
The
Well,
biggest thing that I'm excited about, and that stuff's big, but that's not my full-time thing. And really, what my full-time thing is right now, I'm excited about starting my podcast or restarting our podcast because we gave up on doing our podcast a year ago, and we felt like we were doing so many good things, and then life kind of took us in a different direction. And my unfortunately, my wife's mother passed away, and we were going through some other stuff. My daughter had caught the C word, and so we were dealing with that, and we were traveling, and it just felt like so much was going on, and we put it aside for a second, and it's like the one thing that sometimes you don't drink your own juice, like I know what would have kept that going is if we would just push through and found a way to keep continuing it, we'd probably be in a different place right now, but we decided we really wanted to go back and do it because it felt really fulfilling just doing this type of thing with our
that's
kids.
awesome.
And our kid's been speaking on stages and doing some amazing stuff. Well, we want him to see us doing this, and he's on the podcast with us too, and our daughter. And so we just want our kids to see us doing that together, so that we kind of, kids really learn through watching. They don't learn, no, they'll never learn through what you tell them to do.
Amen.
They always learn through seeing you do it. And my youngest ones, I have older kids too, three older kids, but my two young ones, they don't remember Tap Out because they were born way, way after that. So I want them to see us building this business again. I want them to see us go through this. I want them to see what we have to do and the things, the struggles, the putting yourselves in a position where you're uncomfortable. I'm not always uncomfortable. I'm not always comfortable speaking or
Right.
being in front of crowds or audiences or interviewing some, people that I consider people, my mentors, people that I look up to. That's hard for me to do sometimes. But I think we do a pretty good job. And I love having my kids on the podcast, and I love them seeing what we're doing. I love watching them grow. And right now that's what's exciting me. So we have
That's
the
so
Pretty and Punk. We just changed it a little bit. The Pretty and Punk Business Parent Podcast, which is about seeing the struggle, kind of struggles of founders, but the struggles of people building businesses while also raising kids. And it's not an easy thing to do, and you go through a lot while you're doing it, and it's challenging, but it's worth it, and it can be really fulfilling in the way that you're for your kids, them seeing what you're doing, because again, they're going to learn by watching.
I love that. As a father of five myself, that's like the most important thing to me in the world is my kids, my wife, and how I'm teaching them. And to your point, they rarely listen to the words I say, but they almost always mimic my actions. And so that's always cool because I think I do a pretty good job in my actions, and I screw up my words a lot. So
I
that's
know the feeling.
that's good. Dude, so cool. So, couple things. Social media. Where's a good place that people can follow you?
At Tap Out Punkcast, I still use that handle. I
Love
just
it.
never changed it. I figured it's what people know me by. They used to call me Punkcast, as when I was running Tapout, and it's tattooed on my lip. So, at Tapout Punkcast on Instagram and Twitter, and I don't dance on TikTok, but I happen to be on there for just business purposes only. And then, of course, our YouTube, you can find us at Pretty and Punk Business Family Empire. Pretty and Punk Business Family Empire.
Love it, love it. So yeah, be sure to follow you. Hey, no judgment on TikTok. I think TikTok's one of the coolest phenomenons of our time, and it's actually one of the only social media platforms where freedom of speech still exists. It's like Twitter and TikTok, and it's funny because it's owned by a Chinese company, and here we are trying to shut it down. And I think we're probably trying to shut it down more because of freedom of speech. They want to shut us up, but
Yeah.
So I love TikTok. Great spot. Couple other things. So number one habit that like you, or one or two habits that just drastically change your day, change your life, whether it's fitness or what are some of your favorite habits?
Oh man, some of the habits I wish I was better at. One of the things I do, I honestly, I think it's the one thing that keeps me grounded. And I actually started off for my kids, but I consider myself, a church-going, God-loving father, but I wasn't, in a lot of ways, I wasn't praying like I probably should. And I get up every morning now and I pray with my kids. So
It's awesome.
I think that's probably one of the best habits I have. And then I have, when I go through my kids, see, I get stupid emotional over stuff like this. So
That's great.
I
Love it.
do,
More emotion, the better.
oh man, affirmations with my kids in the morning. My wife actually started that, which is all the credit to her for that. But
Give me two of the affirmations that you guys say.
we say I have our kids say they'll say it and then we'll repeat after them. Sometimes we'll do our own too, but they'll say I'm powerful.
Awesome.
And we'll say it, and they'll say, "I can do anything through God," and then we'll say it, and then they'll say, "I'm gonna change the world." And so we make them do 10 affirmations in the morning and a few at night, and they do a lot of quotes and stuff throughout the day. My son loves to do quotes, so if you go to his Instagram, Daniel David Inc., you'll see all his quotes that he does and his speeches and stuff.
How old is he?
He's 6.
Oh, that's so cool. Good for him. What so favorite book, favorite author, favorite fiction, nonfiction, what is it?
Well, I mean, of course, Star Wars, but no, I won't say that because nobody will get nothing from that. Honestly, the one book I honestly feel like built our business. If I had to give credit to something outside of ourselves and God, I have to say that the book How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie changed everything about the way we dealt with people, and it built our business. I know there's no way. I mean, there was on September 11th, 2001, when those planes were crashing into those buildings in New York, and that horrible thing was happening. We were sitting in a conference room with 2 billionaires, Frank Fertitta and Lorenzo Fertitta and Dana White. And we're talking about how Tapout is going to be a part of the UFC as long as they own it, that we will always have a place in the UFC. We don't get into conversations with people like that unless you have some understanding of how to speak to people in the right way, and how to deal with people, and how to just have those conversations, and how to win friends and influence people. And it's about influence in a good way. It's about putting other people first. It's about dealing with people in a way that is selfish but unselfish. And it was just an incredible book. I've read it probably 30 times or so now. Listened to it. I have it on audio. I have the CDs. I have the tapes back in the day. I have it in all forms. I have multiple books. I have signed books. I sent you a signed book, didn't I?
Yeah, you did.
Yeah, I mean, oh no, I sent you a different book. I sent you
different signed book, but yeah.
But yes, but the How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie is my favorite book of all time.
So cool. Thanks for sharing that with us. So kind of last question to leave off on, somebody's feeling discouraged in life, whether it's they're wanting to take the next leap, whether it's into entrepreneurship or they're feeling like giving up. What words of advice do you have for them?
I mean, we said it. Be relentless and don't give up. I mean, that's the biggest. That's the only rules to success. I was a D student when I graduated. I'm not the smartest tool in the shed. I'm a guy who just refuses to give up. Everybody in the room is always smarter than I am. I get into a room and I make sure it's that way. I want to be surrounded by great people. I think that was part of Tapout's success. But you gotta know that if you just don't give up, and that doesn't mean the same idea. Like, some people confuse this for like, hey, I have a great idea for this clothing company. Well, down the road, there's so many telltale signs that this isn't going to work. And maybe you have to give up on that idea, but don't give up on yourself.
Right.
Be relentless about yourself. Decide that, hey, that didn't work. Maybe I have to pivot and it's going to be this instead. Be relentless. Don't give up. Don't listen to the naysayers and just keep moving forward. I know it sounds like, something somebody would tell you in a book but it's just so true. It's the reason why it's out there is because it's true that if you don't give up, you will make it at some point.
Love that. Appreciate your time today, Dan. I know it's valuable and I know with family and business and everything else that you have going on. So appreciate you sharing some of your time with us today and excited to catch up with you in the future, my man.
Thank you for having me on, Chris. I appreciate it.
All right, my dude. Have a good one.